The unexpected transfer. It was a typical morning at the Galactic Academy, a school located on a distant planet in the heart of a galaxy filled with alien species. The gym was buzzing with energy as cadets from different species, all highly trained and athletic, prepared for their daily physical training session. For years, the Academy had maintained a reputation for producing the strongest, most skilled warriors in the galaxy. The cadets boasted about their species' unmatched abilities. The fleet-footed Zinxians, the brute-strength Orcalians, and the highly intelligent Frets, each one confident in their own superiority. Today was no different, except for one thing. The intercom system blared to life, interrupting the cadets' chatter. "Attention all students," the voice crackled. "There has been a transfer to our academy today. A new cadet will be joining the gym class. His name is Elias Mercer. Please welcome him." A strange silence spread through the gym. The cadets looked around at each other, trying to make sense of what they had just heard. A transfer student. From where? The gym instructor, a towering alien named Vulgar, scowled as he looked up at the holographic screen. "What is this? The human?" he muttered to himself. "A human in my gym class? Ridiculous." There was a long pause before laughter rippled through the room. The idea of a human, one of the so-called Deathworlders, joining their elite academy was comical. Humans were known throughout the galaxy for surviving on a dangerous and hostile planet, but the thought of one of them competing in gym class against trained alien cadets seemed absurd. Humans were primitive, weak, and unrefined. Surely, this would be nothing more than a spectacle, nothing to worry about. Elias Mercer, the new transfer, walked into the gym just as the last bits of laughter died down. He was human, just as the announcement had stated, but there was something about him that made the other cadets pause. He wasn't tall or muscular like the aliens around him, and he had the look of someone who didn't belong in a place like this. At first glance, he seemed like an ordinary human, someone who could easily be dismissed. But there was a glint in his eyes, a quiet confidence that none of the cadets had expected. He was dressed in the Academy's standard gym attire, and his demeanor showed no signs of hesitation or fear. The cadets sized him up. He was out of place, that was certain. Humans, at least the ones they'd encountered before, weren't nearly as strong or fast as the species they shared the Academy with. The Vrets had razor-sharp intellects, the Orcalians had brute strength, and the Zinxians, well, their agility was unmatched. Elias Mercer wasn't anything special, or so they thought. Vulgar stepped forward, his massive arms crossed over his chest. He eyed Elias with a mixture of amusement and contempt. "So, you're the human who thinks he can join the elite of the galaxy," he said, his voice deep and menacing. Elias didn't flinch. He simply nodded, his expression unreadable. "I'm here to learn," he said, "and to show you that humans aren't what you think." The cadets snickered, but Vulgar raised a hand, silencing them. "Very well, human. We'll see how long you last." The gym instructor wasn't about to let the newcomer off easy. The first exercise of the day was the standard sprint, something that would test not only speed but endurance as well. Vulgar had every intention of embarrassing the human in front of everyone. "You'll start at the far end of the gym," Vulgar said, pointing to the far wall. "The objective is simple. Run to the other side. The cadets here can do it in 10 seconds, or less. I'll be impressed if you even make it halfway." Elias took his position at the starting line. He glanced around the gym at the watching cadets, all of whom were eagerly awaiting his failure. Their looks of disbelief and laughter fueled his determination. Vulgar's voice boomed across the gym. "Ready, set, go." Without a moment's hesitation, Elias shot off the line, his legs propelling him forward at an incredible speed. The cadets' laughter quickly turned to silence. They had expected the human to stumble, to falter, anything that would prove his inferiority. But Elias was fast, faster than anyone expected. He surged across the gym floor, his strides long and powerful. In a matter of seconds, he reached the other side of the gym. Volgar's eyes widened. The aliens around the gym stood frozen, their mouths agape. It had taken Elias just 5 seconds to reach the end. 5 seconds, the fastest any of them had ever seen. The Vrets had been known for their speed, but this human had just shattered their expectations. Elias turned to face the cadets, breathing evenly, as if it had been no more than a warm-up. "I'm not here to be a joke," he said calmly, his eyes locked on Volgar. "I'm here to show you what humans are capable of." There was an awkward silence. No one knew how to respond. The laughter had died down, replaced by a quiet sense of unease. Elias had just done what no one expected. And that was only the beginning. Volgar's jaw tightened. "That was impressive. But let's see how you handle the next test." Elias wasn't done yet. He had only just begun proving that the Deathworlder was far more than the aliens had bargained for. The first challenge. The gym had fallen eerily quiet after Elias's unexpected sprint. No one had expected the human to be that fast, let alone faster than any alien in the room. The cadets, who had once thought of themselves as untouchable, now found themselves questioning everything they had believed about humans. Elias had proven that he wasn't the joke they had all expected. The quiet hum of the gym's air system was the only sound that filled the room as Volgar, the gym instructor, cleared his throat. "Well, that was impressive," Volgar said, his deep voice resonating throughout the gym. "But let's see how you do with something a little more challenging." He turned and walked toward the far side of the gym, where a large set of equipment was waiting. It was a set of heavy lifting machines, designed for the strongest cadets in the academy. These machines could test the limits of even the most powerful alien species. Volgar grinned as he turned back to Elias. "You'll lift this weight," Volgar said as he pointed to one of the machines. "The Orcalians have used it before, and it's barely a challenge for them. The strongest aliens here could barely break a sweat with it." Elias didn't respond, simply walking over to the machine as the rest of the cadets watched, their gazes fixed on him. They expected him to struggle, perhaps fail entirely. After all, humans were known for being weak compared to the other species in the galaxy. It was nearly impossible to imagine one of them lifting the same weight an Orcalian could handle with ease. Elias stood before the machine, examining it closely. His expression was calm, almost detached. He had seen machines like this before on Earth, and the technology was no stranger to him. The weight on the machine was easily 5 times heavier than anything humans typically lifted in their daily lives, but that didn't intimidate Elias. He knew exactly what he was capable of. Volgar's grin widened. "Go ahead, human. Show us what you've got." Elias bent down to grip the machine's handles. The alien cadets stood in hushed anticipation. The machine was enormous, towering over him. It seemed almost impossible that a human could lift such a weight, yet Elias didn't hesitate. With a deep breath, he heaved. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. The cadets were waiting for him to fail. They were ready to laugh, to point out his weakness. But instead, something incredible happened. Elias's muscles flexed as he pushed with all his strength. Slowly but surely, the weight began to rise. The cadets blinked in disbelief as the human lifted the machine with ease. Volgar's eyes widened as Elias continued, his expression calm and controlled. The weight was no challenge for him. He was lifting it as if it were a simple task. The cadets looked at one another, their faces a mix of shock and awe. They had seen aliens with incredible strength, but none of them had ever seen a human do anything close to this. Even the Orcalians, with their enormous strength, would struggle with this machine. Yet here was Elias, effortlessly lifting it with the focus and precision of a trained warrior. With a final grunt, Elias set the weight down gently, finishing the task without breaking a sweat. The room was dead silent. The cadets stood frozen, their mouths agape, staring at the human who had just shattered their perception of what was possible. Volgar, the gym instructor, took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. "Impressive," he said, his voice laced with disbelief. "But that's only the beginning." You still have much to prove, human. But Elias didn't need to prove anything to anyone. He had already shown them that humans were far more capable than they had ever imagined. His strength, his speed, and his unshakable confidence were already leaving an impression on the entire academy. And for the first time, the aliens were beginning to realize that humans were not to be underestimated. As the cadets slowly started to recover from the shock of what they had just witnessed, Elias turned to face them. His expression was calm, but there was a spark of something fierce in his eyes. He had come here not just to prove himself, but to show these aliens that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. "You may have your strength and your speed," Elias said, his voice steady. "But don't forget, humans have something even more powerful than that. The will to survive, the will to win. And no matter how many times you underestimate us, we'll keep proving you wrong." The cadets were quiet, processing his words. They had thought this would be easy, that they could laugh at the human and show him his place. But Elias wasn't just surviving in their gym class. He was thriving. The once dismissive alien cadets were beginning to realize that the human in front of them was a different breed altogether. And this was only the beginning. Elias's presence in the gym had already shaken their beliefs to their core. The aliens were no longer laughing. Instead, they were beginning to feel something they had never thought possible: fear. Elias Mercer was no ordinary human, and he had just shown them all what humans were truly capable of. The challenge intensifies. The gym was still in shock from Elias's incredible feats. Not only had he outpaced the fastest cadets, but he had lifted a weight that would have left even the strongest alien struggling. The cadets were no longer laughing. Now, they watched with a mix of curiosity, disbelief, and growing respect. Their earlier confidence had turned to doubt, and the once boasting aliens were beginning to reconsider their assumptions about the humans they had long considered primitive. Vulgar, still trying to recover from the shock, clenched his jaw and called out to the gym's control panel. The entire gym suddenly shifted, and the walls began to hum as a new set of challenges appeared before the cadets. "All right, human," Vulgar said, his voice no longer mocking. "You've impressed us so far. But now we will see if you have the endurance to back up that strength." A large circular arena appeared in the center of the gym. On the far side of the arena, a series of holographic barriers emerged, flickering with blue energy. From the sound of it, the challenge ahead was not going to be easy. "You will face the holo fighters now," Vulgar explained, turning to Elias. "These are simulated warriors. You'll need to defeat them in combat. They'll be designed to test your skill, endurance, and tactics. Your strength is impressive, but can you fight?" Elias didn't hesitate. He stood tall, ready for whatever came next. There was something about his calmness that made the cadets uneasy. They had expected him to falter, to show weakness in the face of this next challenge. But Elias was no ordinary human, and he wasn't about to back down. The holofighters activated, and the arena was filled with the sudden appearance of various combatants. They ranged from agile aliens with sharp claws to towering figures with massive shields. Each fighter was a formidable opponent in its own right, and Elias could already feel the weight of the situation. The first fighter, a sleek, humanoid alien with black scales and glowing eyes, charged at him, its speed incredible. The cadets, watching from the sidelines, leaned forward in anticipation, eager to see how the human would handle this first test. Elias was ready. He wasn't the fastest, but he had trained his reflexes. As the alien leaped toward him, Elias sidestepped and ducked, narrowly avoiding the razor-sharp claws. His heart raced, but his mind stayed calm. He knew this was a test of endurance, and he wasn't going to let his guard down. The alien, frustrated by its miss, spun around and attempted another attack. But Elias was quicker this time. He grabbed the alien's arm as it passed by, using its momentum against it. With a quick twist, Elias threw the creature to the ground, knocking it out cold. The cadets stared in shock. The human had just defeated the first holofighter in under 30 seconds. The Zinxians, known for their speed, exchanged uneasy glances. None of them had expected this. Volgar scowled, but he nodded in approval. Not bad, human, but the next one is much tougher. Before Elias could react, the next holofighter emerged from the arena's walls. This time, it was larger and more armored, a hulking beast with reinforced plating over its body. It roared and charged at Elias, its footsteps thundering against the floor. The cadets tensed up, knowing that this would be a real test of the human's abilities. Elias could feel the ground shake as the creature came at him. This was different. Strength wasn't going to win this fight. It was about strategy. The creature was far stronger than the previous one, and Elias knew he couldn't just overpower it. As the beast swung its massive claws, Elias dodged with a calculated leap, rolling to the side to avoid its deadly swipe. His heart raced, but his mind stayed focused. The creature turned, angrier now, and charged again. It was fast, but its movements were predictable. Elias noticed the gaps in its armor as it lunged, and he calculated his next move with precision. As the creature swiped again, Elias grabbed a metal pole that had been left behind by the first fighter. He used it as a makeshift spear, jabbing it into the creature's exposed side. The pole went through the gap in the armor with ease, and the beast let out a roar of pain. The cadets gasped, surprised by the human's quick thinking. Volgar's expression turned from disdain to a begrudging respect. The beast staggered back, momentarily disoriented. Elias didn't waste any time. He followed up with another strike, this one landing directly on the creature's chest, causing it to stumble and fall to the ground. Within moments, the creature was down, incapacitated. Elias stood, breathing heavily but determined, staring down at his defeated opponent. The cadets were silent. They couldn't believe what they had just seen. The human had defeated two of the most difficult opponents with skill and strategy, and without relying on brute strength alone. They had underestimated him, and now they were beginning to realize that the Deathworlder in front of them was not a joke. He was a force to be reckoned with. Volgar's eyes narrowed as he turned to the other cadets. "Prepare yourselves," he said. "The final test will be the ultimate challenge. We'll see if the human can truly survive." Elias wasn't done yet. He had proven that humans were more than capable of surviving in this gym. But this final challenge, the one Volgar spoke of, would test his limits. As he looked around at the stunned cadets, Elias knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning, and he wasn't going to back down. The final test. The gym grew eerily silent as Volgar activated the final challenge. The massive arena around Elias began to shift and transform, its walls glowing with a pale blue light. A low hum filled the air as the cadets stood frozen, their eyes focused on the human who had already proven himself more than capable. Elias stood tall, his breathing steady, but his muscles aching from the intense challenges he had already faced. But he wasn't about to back down. Volgar turned to the cadets, his voice now tinged with both admiration and frustration. "This next challenge will test the human's endurance and resolve to their absolute limits. They will face the worst of what we have to offer. No one has ever defeated it. Let's see if the human can change that." The arena walls split open to reveal a vast, darkened pit in the center. From the depths of that pit, strange mechanical sounds echoed, grinding, whirring, and clanking, as if something enormous and dangerous was being summoned from the darkness below. The cadets watched with a mixture of excitement and anticipation. They had all witnessed the human's unexpected strength, but none of them believed Elias could survive what was coming. The ground beneath Elias's feet shifted as a towering figure rose from the pit. The crowd gasped in awe as a massive, hulking figure climbed out. It was the most dangerous and fearsome of all their simulated warriors, a creature designed to destroy anything that stood before it. The creature towered over Elias, its form a blend of organic and mechanical, part alien, part machine. Its metal plating shimmered under the arena's harsh lights, and its eyes glowed an ominous red. The holo-behemoth, as it was called, was designed to be unbeatable, a fusion of alien strength and technology, capable of wiping out entire battalions of soldiers in moments. Elias squinted at the creature, his mind already racing. He knew this wasn't going to be like anything he had faced before. The holo-behemoth was fast, strong, and equipped with devastating energy weapons built into its arms. But Elias had one thing the creature didn't: human ingenuity. The beast roared, shaking the arena as its massive metal fists slammed into the ground. The floor cracked under its immense weight as it charged at Elias, its footsteps shaking the very foundation of the gym. The cadets could feel the ground tremble beneath them, and for the first time, a few of them looked nervous. They had never seen anything like this before. Elias didn't wait for the beast to come to him. He dove to the side, narrowly avoiding a crushing blow that would have shattered his bones. The creature's roar echoed as it swung its massive fist again, aiming for where Elias had just been. But Elias was already in motion, using his human reflexes to dodge and weave, staying one step ahead of the behemoth's attacks. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting to prove that humans could stand up to the most terrifying creatures in the galaxy. His mind raced, calculating every move, every strike. He knew he couldn't just brute force his way through this fight. It was a battle of wits, agility, and resilience, and that was something humans excelled at. The holo-behemoth swung its arm again, but this time Elias was ready. As the metallic fist came crashing toward him, he rolled to the side, grabbing a fallen piece of debris along the way. Using it as a makeshift shield, he blocked the incoming blow, the impact vibrating through his entire body. The creature snarled in frustration, its mechanical eye narrowing. Elias knew it would take more than just dodging and blocking to defeat this monstrosity. He needed to find a weakness, something the creature wasn't prepared for. And that's when he noticed it. There was a small flickering light on the side of the beast's chest, a weak point hidden beneath its armor. Without hesitation, Elias sprinted toward the creature, dodging another strike as he closed the distance. His muscles screamed in protest, but his determination pushed him forward. As he reached the creature's side, he leaped up, slamming his knee into its side, using the momentum to climb onto its back. The cadets gasped as they watched the human scramble up the beast like a trained warrior. Elias, perched on the creature's back, spotted the glowing weak point and drove his elbow into it with all his strength. Sparks flew as the armor cracked under the force of the blow. For a moment, the holo-behemoth staggered, its movements faltering. Elias's heart raced as he realized he had just exposed its weak spot. But the creature wasn't finished yet. It spun wildly, trying to throw Elias off. Its massive claws swiped through the air, nearly catching him as he held on tight. "Come on, come on," Elias muttered under his breath as he reached for the small control panel on the back of the creature. With his fingers slick with sweat, he pressed a button, and a small explosive charge went off, sending a shockwave through the creature's core. The beast howled in pain, its massive form crashing to the ground as sparks and smoke erupted from its body. Elias jumped off just in time, rolling to his feet as the creature crashed in a heap of twisted metal and sparks. The gym was silent. No one had expected the human to defeat the holo-behemoth. The cadets stood in stunned disbelief, staring at the fallen beast, then at Elias, who was breathing heavily but standing victorious. Volger's voice broke the silence, his tone now full of respect. "Unbelievable. You did it. You actually did it." Elias wiped the sweat from his brow, his eyes burning with determination. He wasn't done yet. This was more than just a test of strength. It was a statement. Humans were capable of anything, and he had just shown the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. The cadets exchanged glances, their minds racing with new respect for the human standing before them. Elias had shattered their beliefs, and they now understood that they would never look at humanity the same way again. As Volger stepped forward, he offered a nod. "You've earned their respect, human. You've proven that you're more than capable of standing with the best." Elias didn't smile, but he nodded in return. I'm just getting started. The challenge had only just begun, and the universe would soon realize that humans were a force unlike any other. The echo of human strength. The atmosphere in the gym had shifted. What had started as mockery and dismissal was now replaced by an undeniable respect. Elias stood at the center of the arena, sweat trickling down his face, his chest heaving from the exertion. The cadets, once skeptical and amused by the idea of a human in their midst, were now watching him with wide eyes. They had witnessed the impossible, a single human defeating the most powerful creature they had ever encountered. Volger, standing at the edge of the arena, folded his arms across his chest. His expression was unreadable, but there was something different about the way he observed Elias now. The challenge had been set, and Elias had delivered. He had not only surpassed their expectations, but had also sent a message that would ripple across the galaxy. One by one, the cadets began to step forward, their previous arrogance replaced with curiosity. They had come here to see the human fail, to confirm their superiority over this primitive species. But now, they were facing the uncomfortable reality that humans were capable of things they had never imagined. Elias, right? A tall, muscular alien stepped forward, his voice hesitant. He had been one of the cadets who had laughed when Elias first entered the arena. Now his tone was filled with admiration. I've never seen anything like that before. How did you? Elias wiped his brow, trying to catch his breath. It's simple, really. The trick is to never underestimate your opponent, no matter how big or strong they are. And keep thinking, always stay one step ahead. The cadet nodded slowly, his expression one of awe. I never thought a human could think that quickly. Your strategy was perfect. Elias smiled, though it was more of a grimace than a grin. He was tired, but the victory was worth the effort. It wasn't just strategy. It was also grit. We humans never give up, no matter the odds. You just have to dig deep. As more cadets approached, Elias found himself surrounded. There were no jokes now, no dismissive sneers. Instead, they were all eager to hear more from the human who had just shattered their assumptions about their own superiority. Even Volger seemed to soften, his earlier harshness replaced by a measured interest. You've done something incredible, Volger said, stepping closer to Elias. You've not only passed the test, but have shown that humans are not to be underestimated. There is something about you, something I can't quite place. But one thing is certain, your species is far more dangerous than we thought. Elias nodded, his eyes meeting Volger's. You're right. Humans aren't just strong physically. We're resourceful, relentless, and we've learned how to survive against the odds. We may be new to this galaxy, but we've been fighting for our survival on our homeworld for centuries. And if you think we're primitive, you've only seen the tip of the iceberg. The cadets stood quietly, processing his words. Some nodded in understanding, while others looked like they were still grappling with the new reality. Their pride had been broken in a single, unforgettable moment. They had expected to crush a human, but instead, they had watched one defeat a creature that even the most seasoned warriors feared. Volger gestured toward the exit of the arena. You've earned the right to rest. But know this, Elias. The rest of your journey will not be so easy. This victory is just the beginning. The galaxy is a much bigger place, and there are still those who will see humans as nothing more than a nuisance. But you've shown that when pushed, humans can rise to the challenge. Elias straightened, brushing the dirt off his clothes. I'm ready. Bring it on. The cadets turned to leave, still talking amongst themselves, their whispers laced with awe and disbelief. They would never forget the day a human had walked into their gym class and turned their world upside down. As Elias stood alone in the arena, he felt a surge of pride and determination. This was just one battle, but it had changed everything. The message had been sent. Humans were no longer just the underdogs. They were players in this grand galaxy, and no one would ever view them as weak again. The silence of the arena hung in the air for a moment before the doors slid open, signaling the end of the challenge. But for Elias, this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown dangers and challenges, but he knew one thing for certain: humanity was ready. And with the power of their will, there was no force in the universe that could stand in their way. As he walked out of the gym, the echoes of his victory followed him, resonating across the galaxy. The Deathworlders had arrived, and the universe would soon learn what it meant to challenge a human. The unforeseen challenge. The next few days were a whirlwind for Elias. News of his victory spread quickly through the military academy. His name was on everyone's lips. He was no longer just a human cadet among aliens. He had become a symbol of strength, resilience, and a relentless will to survive. The reputation of humans was changing before their eyes, and the aliens who had once scoffed at his species now looked at him with a mixture of fear and respect. But despite the newfound attention, Elias knew his journey was far from over. There were still many who did not believe in humanity's potential. Some saw his victory as a fluke, others dismissed it as nothing more than luck. And in the higher echelons of the Galactic Council, there were whispers that a human in their midst was a dangerous anomaly that needed to be controlled. One such person was the commander of the Academy's training division, an alien named Kothar. Kothar had witnessed Elias's performance and had been silent ever since. Now he stood at the front of the Academy's main briefing room, addressing a group of high-ranking officers and cadets. "We can no longer deny it." Kothar's voice was cold and commanding. "The human cadet has proven himself in ways that none of us expected. But this has raised concerns. His strength, his ingenuity. It is unlike anything we've seen before. And as we all know, the strength of the human spirit can be both a blessing and a curse." A murmur of agreement spread through the room. Many of the officers had grown uneasy with the attention Elias was receiving, and some were beginning to question if he was truly just a soldier or if something more dangerous lay beneath the surface. Elias, seated at the back of the room, listened carefully. He knew he had made an impact, but he also understood that not everyone would be thrilled with a human rising to prominence. His victory over the alien beast had been a turning point, but it had also made him a target. Kothar continued, pacing in front of the officers. "The galaxy is a vast and dangerous place. If humans are truly as strong as Elias has shown, we must consider the implications. We have to decide whether we will tolerate them as equals, or if they will become a threat to our way of life." The room fell silent. The tension was palpable. Elias could feel all eyes turning toward him. His presence was no longer just a curiosity. It was a challenge to the established order. "Perhaps it's time we put him to the test," Kothar said, his voice cutting through the silence. "Not just against beasts, but against the best the galaxy has to offer. We will see if humans truly possess what they claim, or if they are nothing more than a fluke." Elias stood up, his heart racing. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The challenge had been laid out. He knew that facing the galaxy's most formidable warriors would be no easy feat, but this was his chance to prove that humans were not just survivors. They were conquerors. "I accept," Elias said, his voice steady and calm. The room erupted into whispers, but Kothar's eyes narrowed. "You accept without knowing what awaits you." "I don't need to know," Elias replied, his confidence unwavering. "I've survived worse, and I will survive whatever you throw at me." Kothar smiled, a cold and calculating smile. "Very well. You will face the galaxy's most elite warriors in a series of trials. If you can defeat them, you will prove your worth. But if you fail, your species will forever be relegated to the bottom of the food chain." Elias nodded, accepting the challenge. He knew the risks, but he was determined to show the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. This was his moment. The training had prepared him, but the fire within him would be what carried him through. As Elias left the briefing room, the weight of the upcoming trials bore down on him. This was no longer just about proving himself to the aliens at the Academy. This was about proving to the entire galaxy that humans were a force to be reckoned with, and he would stop at nothing to show them that humans could overcome any challenge thrown their way. The trials would begin soon. But for Elias, it wasn't just about the victory. It was about sending a message to the galaxy. Humans were not just survivors. They were warriors. And no alien, no matter how powerful, could stand in their way. The universe was about to learn just how deadly a Deathworlder could be. And Elias was ready to show them. The final trial. The day of the trials arrived. The massive arena stood tall, bathed in the eerie glow of the twin suns that hung in the sky. The air was thick with anticipation as alien warriors, generals, and high-ranking officials filled the stands. A hush fell over the crowd as Elias, the human cadet who had already shattered expectations, stepped into the center of the arena. His every move was watched with bated breath. He had already proven himself once, but now he would have to face the elite, warriors from every corner of the galaxy. If he could defeat them, it would not just be a personal victory. It would be the final nail in the coffin of humanity's underestimation. The entire galaxy would see them as something more than mere survivors. They would see them as conquerors. Elias felt the weight of the eyes on him, but he had learned to shut out distractions. The only thing that mattered now was the fight ahead. His body was bruised from the previous trials, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. He knew what he had to do. He was ready. The first opponent was a towering beast of muscle and armor, a member of the ruthless Gorn race. Their reputation for brutality was known across the galaxy. It was said that their warriors were unmatched in strength, and their ferocity in battle was legendary. The horn sounded, signaling the beginning of the trial. The Gorn warrior charged with terrifying speed, swinging a massive axe that could cleave through steel. Elias didn't flinch. His eyes narrowed as he timed his movements carefully. At the last moment, he dodged to the side, narrowly avoiding the deadly swing. In one fluid motion, he seized the Gorn's arm and flipped him to the ground with a technique he had learned from years of training. The crowd gasped. The Gorn warrior struggled, his massive limbs thrashing in the dirt, but Elias was relentless. He pinned the Gorn to the ground, his knee pressing into the alien's chest as he tightened his grip on the warrior's neck. The brute was strong, but Elias was faster, more agile, and more resourceful. With a quick twist, Elias subdued the beast, rendering him unconscious in a matter of seconds. A deafening silence filled the arena before the crowd erupted in applause, but Elias barely heard it. His heart pounded in his chest, and his focus remained sharp. The first trial was over, but there were still more to come. The second opponent was a sleek and deadly fighter from the Araxi race, an assassin known for her unparalleled speed and agility. Her reputation as a lethal killer preceded her, and she had taken down entire squads of warriors in the blink of an eye. This fight would not be as simple as the first. The bell rang, and the Araxi assassin sprang into action, her movements a blur. Elias barely had time to react as she darted toward him, her blade gleaming in the light. But he had learned to trust his instincts. He waited for the perfect moment, and then sprang into action, dodging her first strike by a fraction of an inch. He could feel her every movement, the way the air shifted with her speed. She was good, but Elias was better at adapting. With each strike, he analyzed her patterns, finding her weaknesses and exploiting them. He used her momentum against her, twisting her arm and sending her flying into the air. She landed hard, winded, and disoriented. Elias didn't hesitate. He moved quickly, locking her in a hold that rendered her helpless. The crowd gasped as the assassin struggled, but she knew she was defeated. She had underestimated him just as everyone else had. With a simple movement, Elias neutralized her, leaving her with no choice but to surrender. The silence in the arena was deafening. No one had expected this human to be so skilled, so deadly. Elias had just dispatched two of the galaxy's most feared warriors, and yet he stood there, unfazed, as if it were nothing. Kothar, who had been watching from the stands, looked on with a mixture of concern and admiration. Elias was proving everyone wrong, showing that humans were capable of more than anyone had ever imagined. But there was still one final trial to go. The last trial would be the hardest. Elias would face the leader of the alien mercenary group that had been hired to test him, the ruthless Jaruk, a warrior known for his unmatched strength, cunning, and brutality. If Elias could defeat him, there would be no denying humanity's place in the galaxy. But if he failed, he would be nothing more than a footnote in the history of the galaxy's warriors. The final bell rang, and Jaruk strode into the arena, his massive form casting a shadow over Elias. The two locked eyes, and for the first time, Elias felt a twinge of doubt. Jaruk was everything Elias had trained for, everything he had prepared for. Jaruk grinned, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. "You've done well, human. But now you face your final challenge. Prepare to die." Elias stood tall, undeterred. "I didn't come this far to lose." With that, the final battle began. The two fighters clashed, the ground shaking with each impact. Jaruk's strength was overwhelming, but Elias's speed and determination kept him on his feet. Every move was calculated, every strike precise. Elias could feel the strain in his body, but he pushed through it, refusing to give up. The fight raged on, and the crowd was on the edge of their seats. But in the end, it was Elias's will that prevailed. With one final bone-crushing move, he disarmed Jaruk and sent the warrior sprawling to the ground. The arena fell silent for a heartbeat before it erupted in cheers. Elias had done it. He had defeated the galaxy's deadliest mercenaries and proven that humans were not just survivors. They were warriors. He had shattered every expectation and shown the galaxy that when it came to strength, skill, and determination, humans were a force to be reckoned with. As Elias stood in the center of the arena, victorious, he knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy had learned the hard way that underestimating humanity was a dangerous mistake, and with the message sent, Elias was ready for whatever came next. The galaxy would never be the same again.